Redditors who grew up poor. What were things you thought were normal as a child that were actually a result of your economic status? I thought most kids worked and gave the money to the family fund to get through the month. It wasn't until I was a senior did I learn that only poor families really did this. I wish I didn't know this wasn't normal. I grew up poor in a wealthy town and was painfully aware, so it just made me so uncomfortable. The pizza place near my neighborhood would let me sit in their dining area until they closed. They had a TV and pizza. The guy's name was Frank and he would give me pizza to take home with me or a slice and a drink while I sat there. He knew I had no money to pay and still would take care of me. I didn't like being home alone every day and night. Single mom working all the time or sleeping, and would go there a lot just to have a TV to watch. We didn't have one. Eventually my mom couldn't take care of me anymore and I had to move in with some relatives in a different state. I went back to visit when I was on leave after completing basic training and decided to stop in and pay for a slice. Frank remembered me. All those years later, he came out from around the counter and hugged me and told everyone in the dining room I've known him since he was this big, hand motioning to ground very low while speaking with authentic Italian accent. We sat down and ate together and I thanked him for everything he did for me as a kid and he said he was so happy I stopped by and how proud he was of me for becoming a soldier. I'm not crying, it's allergies. My mom used to send me 10 and my brother 8 to the dairy to buy milk, using a check for the exact amount the milk costs. They pretty quickly caught on that the checks would always bounce, so they put up a sign with our pictures saying do not accept checks from these children. It was many years later that I looked back at those times and realized that we were poor. Man, that seems rough. Hope things are better. Having toothache all the time. I didn't realize other kids saw a dentist. I didn't know what a dentist was until I was 8. Even living in a country with universal health care, those are all private. And the time I broke a tooth, my parents were yelling for days, not at me, but at the dentist, the prices etc. I knew what it was about since I was about 9, so I felt like crap for quite a while. Wearing dad's oversized t-shirt to bed instead of jammies. I had no idea this wasn't a common practice until my first sleepover. Everyone else was wearing princess nighties and I was repping the Sun Devils. I loved doing this because his shirts were so soft. Now I realize that's because the cotton had been washed so many times. My favorite was a purple and white striped one because I thought it looked like something a pirate would wear. I remember when I was maybe 10 or so staying over at a friend's house, which was an apartment. His mom gave us 2-liter bottles of hot water before going to bed. I thought that was kind of neat. Your own little space heater. In reality it's because his mom couldn't afford heat. Hot water bottles. I grew up in a house without heating. We had these soft, wobbly rubber bottles you'd fill up from the kettle. Of course that would mean it's now super hot, so my nana knitted animal covers to put over them so we could take them to bed. Parents having to work even with their 10-month-old daughter, that's me, was sick in the hospital. It was measles outbreak from my daycare and 2 other infants had already passed. They didn't know if I would make it, but mama had to keep her job and insurance, so she had to work. This kind of thing is a freaking tragedy. Having boxes or entire cases of random food show up at the house. Turns out it was always expired and my dad was dumpster diving to put food on the table. I still remember the case of no-bake cheesecake mixes we got when I was 8 or 9 years old. One of the highlights of my childhood. A lot of expired food just to manufacture a recommendation way to get you to buy more product. There's certain things I won't frick with like yogurt, but if I buy a pack of expired dried pasta, I'm not going to be upset. My mom getting a call each week and hearing her say yes repeatedly as if she was responding to a list of questions. A day or so later, we would stop over at a local church and pick up a box of donated food. Turns out that the call was from a volunteer at the food bank making sure that the stuff we were given would actually get used. Turns out that the call was from a volunteer at the food bank making sure that the stuff we were given would actually get used. While this might seem like it is some sort of persecution of a poor person, it might also be a way of determining need. If someone is unlikely to use something, it can be given to someone else who genuinely needs it. My mother made a sort of casserole she called stuff. It was freaking delicious. Later I requested the recipe, and that's when I learned that stuff was whatever was in the fridge, along with flour and oil. That's just good economics. Don't waste stuff when you can use it. I make pretty good money, and haven't ever been in financial straits growing up, but I try to do that. Repurpose leftovers all the time. My mom's bedroom was the living room for a lot of my life. She would have a queen bed and a dresser out there with a TV and couches. We had a big family and not enough bedrooms. Never seemed weird to me. My family always had someone in the living room. We joked around and would say I'm getting the living room in our next apartment lol. We had to try and have fun. My life didn't seem so bad after I went to my sister's ex-BF house though, and seeing that his little sister slept on the kitchen table to avoid the bed bugs. That put things in perspective for me. I wore a lot of baggy clothes that were once my brother's or older cousins. Luckily in the 90s baggy clothes were in style. Free school lunch. Salt and lemon on tortillas. My dad would get another car every 5 years or so. Every time we did, it was like we got a brand new car, even though it was like 10-15 years old every time. I also thought it was normal for a family of 5 to live in a single apartment. I too wouldn't change anything about it. It definitely made me appreciate the smaller things in life, especially now that I'm finally a parent myself. The lemon part is weird. Maybe he got them for free or something, but I would definitely consider a lemon to be a luxury item if I was struggling to put food on the table. Going to the Boys and Girls Club Thanksgiving dinner. I didn't realize that was odd until I saw something on ESPN where a football player donated money to the B&G Club, and there was a segment about a Thanksgiving dinner for hungry kids walking to the church to pick up boxes of food. I thought churches gave out food in an attempt to recruit people, not because we were actually that hungry. Staying home alone every weekday in the summer, at age 8 and babysitting my 3-year-old brother. That was awful. Getting a job at age 14 to help pay the rent. I knew the part where mom forged our birth certificates to make us look older wasn't normal, but I thought most teenagers paid rent and only the rich ones got to do after school activities like sports teams instead of working. I wasn't 8, but when I was in middle school, I had to watch my little brother. Couldn't do anything. I hated that my parents made me do it. They hated making me do it. All my friends would say how dumb it was that I had to watch my little brother. Of course they were too young to understand the position my parents were in. Man, that sucked. For example, I thought that everyone kept their thermostat set to a max of 65 degrees, 50 at night, and wore sweaters indoors. When I found out most people had theirs set at 72, it felt so extravagant. As an adult, I still feel self-indulgent if my heat is cranked up to 68 degrees. We had a wood stove. I thought spending a good chunk of your summer splitting, loading into the cellar, wood hatch, and then piling cord after cord of firewood to last through a New England winter was normal, even when you're like 10 years old. My family and extended family slowly immigrated to America in the 90s. My parents and I were some of the last ones from my extended family to leave, and we were all pretty poor in the old country. To help us make ends meet while waiting to leave, my extended family from America would send us packaged foods. We ate ramen a few times a week and thought that it was the most delicious meal on earth. I only found out the truth about ramen years later when we had arrived in America. But the biggest shocker? The day we arrived in America, we went to my aunt's house and there in her kitchen was a large bunch of 7 bananas. This was mind-blowing to me because up until then, I had only seen this in stores and was lucky to maybe eat 1 banana every few months, if they were even around, and if my parents had gotten paid and could afford to treat me. Your dad must have been feeling everything when he tossed that coat. Just as a parent, imagining going from maybe the baby can have a banana this fall to food mountains. It makes me want to cry. Your dad throwing his coat away seems so symbolic of all that. My parents couldn't afford disposable diapers back in the day. They were considered an extravagant luxury, so they just used old towels and they'll clean and wash them for reuse. Nowadays I see reusable diapers and associated services to be all the rage these days, while disposables are considered to be the cheap option. Kind of funny how that's done a total 180. Going to the food bank. Powdered milk. Back when McDonald's had 20-cent hamburgers, my mom would get 5 for $1 no cheese because we have cheese at home. We have cheese at home brought back vivid memories. When the Soviet Union fell and my parents lost both of their jobs, buckwheat kashal with a tiny bit of sugar for a weekly sweet treat, I could probably count on both of my hands the amount of times I had candies. All were just given at a play date or a school birthday in a classroom. When I was younger, I thought it was normal for a 7-year-old to be home alone. My mother took a second night job at a restaurant because she heard that they gave their employees leftovers. Restaurant jobs when you're poor, that free meal on shift or leftovers can make such a big difference. Plus, if you get tips, you always have a little cash each day. Growing up, every time one of us kids asked about a new toy or such that we had seen an advertisement for, my dad would respond with "that stuff is for rich people." That was pretty much my dad's catch-all answer to everything we asked for. As adults, me and my brothers and sisters laugh about it now, but back then it was serious. There were times that the family barely had enough to eat. I can't imagine how hard it was for my dad to have to say no to nearly everything his kids asked for. He's gone now, but I wish I could call him right now and tell him it was okay. Yes, same here, dude. I can't imagine the stress my dad was under with the power etc constantly being cut off. Never enough food. He too has passed, and I too wish I'd told him we had a happy childhood regardless, and he did well with what he had. Bathing in a patched up kiddie pool that your mom found on the side of a road because you didn't have a tub. Eating eggs for every meal for 3 weeks straight because your mom got a really good deal. Moving every year because your parents found a cheaper place to live. Being ashamed of your rose art crayons and jealous of your classmates' Crayola crayons. Pawning the family TV for grocery money just until payday. Saving up to rent a VCR and a couple of movies for the weekend. Celebrating birthdays late or not at all because we couldn't afford a party or presents or a birthday cake. Staying at school while other students went on field trips. Clothes shopping at thrift stores, grocery stores, and Family Dollar. Ooh, ugh, frick roasted. I remember getting frustrated at school because every time I sharpened one the tip would break off. I was getting more and more upset, and my teacher asked me what's wrong. So I told her these stupid dollar store pencil crayons wouldn't sharpen. She told me that's what I got for buying school supplies at the dollar store, as though I had a choice in the matter. Bin bags were a perfectly acceptable Halloween costume. No new toys until Christmas. Car boots were a treasure trove. Never really going more than 15 miles from your hometown. Play-Doh was too expensive, so mum used to give us leftover pastry. Never having the car filled up to full. Weird still for me to do that. All my old school friends live in the same 3-mile radius of school. Hand-me-down clothes. People privately renting being well off compared to us living in a council house. Overall, I feel I am more resourceful and I am constantly grateful. There are probably more. My sister and I used to make our own Play-Doh. Can't remember the recipe as it was a good 18 years ago, but it was done with some standard household items. The end result was a bit dry and powdery, and I'm pretty sure it was sucking out all the moisture from our hands like salt, but it was fun. We shared bath water and we took a bath every other day. We went by age, so by the time it got to my turn the water was cold and dirty. This was actually common practice throughout history until modern plumbing. The phrase "don't throw out the baby with the bath water" derives from this, as the baby was the youngest they were last to bathe and the water was dirty from everyone else's baths. It's now meant as an easily avoided error, a bad result from a positive action. At my grandmother's house we put bricks in the wood burning stove during the day and would put them in burlap sacks and under the covers at night. No central heat and we lived in the Alps. I thought everyone had to do this at night. Best sleep ever though. My mom made these little bags from old hand towels and would fill them with dried beans that we would put in the microwave for a minute or so, then use to get the bed warmed up on really cold nights. Cereal for dinner, or spaghetti broccoli soup. That's water with a tablespoon of chicken bouillon, a package of spaghetti, and a package of frozen broccoli. No cheese on tacos. When I was a kid, cheese was more expensive than it is now, so we never ate it on things. I don't think I ever ate cheddar until I was in my late teens. Ugh. Breaks my dang heart, remembering all this. Like when we were kids we weren't supposed to play outside much because we might fall and break a bone, and there'd be no money to take us to the doctor. This is why I don't have kids, I think. Fear that they might have to grow up poor like I did. I thought buying a candy bar at the store was only there for birthday kids. I thought it wasn't allowed for anyone to buy candy if it wasn't your birthday. My parents are self-employed. They have their own party rental business, big tents, tables, popcorn machines, etc. For the first several years getting it off the ground they had no employees, just themselves to do everything. And they also couldn't afford a lot of extras over bills. Definitely not babysitting or daycare. So my brother and I, around 7-8 years old, would be brought with them on weekends and in the summer. As a kid I just thought we were being brought so we could go to cool events and parks. Setups were almost always for community fairs, car shows, or big events like Canada Day. My brother and I would get to play at park playgrounds, run around fields, and sometime participate in parts of the events if we were early for a takedown. We'd even sometimes get leftovers from the event from the people running them, balloons, food, stickers, etc. My parents turned a crappy we can't afford childcare but we have to work problem into some of the best memories of my childhood. Having mum's friends bring food shopping over. It was never something I really thought about, and when I did I just thought they were giving us extra from their own shopping, but they were buying us groceries because mum couldn't afford it. We ate my favorite foods all the time. Peanut butter and jelly, mac and cheese, hot dogs, spaghetti. It didn't hit me until my 20s that we ate those things because they were cheap. We also went to our local fair only every 3 years. This was totally normal to me. Is it a fair year yet? No honey, we have one more year. Okay, runs off to color. Nothing is so broken it can't be fixed. And if it is beyond repair, well I hope we don't need it cause we aren't paying to replace it. Water down the shampoo, conditioner, hand soap, dish soap. When you get to about half, fill it with water. When you get to half of that, fill it with water. When you repeat this enough and you have basically just water, then you buy a new one. If I've forgotten to buy any of these nowadays, I'll admit I use this trick so I don't have to drive back to the store. Dividing all the raviolis in the can into fourths so it would seem like more to everyone. You've got 16 raviolis there. You should be plenty full. Yeesh. If something in the house breaks, it stays broken. Sink starts leaking bad enough it causes an issue, you don't use that sink anymore. Toilet backs up worse than plunging can fix. Tape it down. We're using public restrooms for a while. We had two kinda broken sinks in the bathroom, one only had hot water and the other only had cold with a pair of vice grips on the stem since there was no knob. Good enough. Pickles from a jar is acceptable for dinner. Soy sauce and water equals soup. Ramen seasoning and soy sauce and water equals fancy soup. When we did have them, meat and fish dishes were always oversalted, so you can't eat as much, or you can't taste that it just started going bad. Have no idea how much is anything supposed to cost when they are new, because you've never bought anything new. Call it a shower base and you can feel really fancy about it. We all used the same bath water and after that we always kept a bucket in the tub so we could use the water to flush our toilet. We use drinking water for flushing toilets, so it's pretty good idea to use water drained from washing hands, or in your case bath water to flush number ones. I do it at home sometimes and like to think that's one of my little contributions to environment. As a child, remember a few things. Mayonnaise sandwiches. I have heard them referred to as wish sandwiches, as in, you wish you had something else to go in it. After my father left, we didn't have any money. Mom had never had a job, only a housewife and had a mental breakdown, and she made us homemade pizzas, a slice of bread, ketchup, sliced American cheese with sliced hot dog pieces on top. She would make one hot dog stretch for 3 children. My grandmother would give us the cigarette butts from her cheap cigarettes and let us paint on the bricks outside her house. She would fluff the end of the butt and we would dip it in water and paint our pictures on the bricks. It was an endless canvas because the Georgia heat would make the water evaporate quickly. I remember wearing clothes that my mother had worn in high school, late 80s, when I was in grade 5, late 90s. I never understood why I was made fun of because I felt privileged to have my mother's things, sleeping in the same room as my 2 other sisters. I thought that it was something that was normal because we were siblings. Also, when the winter came, we huddled on the same mattress because we didn't have heat. I didn't know as a child that central heat was a normal thing. Getting the circus animal crackers at the store, you know, the ones in the box with the cloth string as the handle, that was an extreme treat. Like many other Redditors, I wouldn't change thing. I am proud to have been raised poor. It has made me appreciate the small things such as having a grilled cheese Sammy because I can afford butter, or having heat in my home even though I have it set on 66 in winter and AC in the summer and having it set on 78. That bit where you didn't understand why you were being made fun of because you felt privileged to have your mother's things, that hit my heart. What a good kid. What an awesome mom. 99 CLB chicken every single day, cycling through 3 meals at the beginning of the month, to skipping breakfast near the middle, to only having dinner near the end, and finally just sleeping all day a few days before the food stamps were refilled. I remember a lot of things like this. We would get ramen, lots of ramen. Then by the end of the month you basically just did your schoolwork and went to bed. It sort of became the lazy time of the month, when really it was because we just couldn't afford supper. The crap I know now. Sharing bath water with siblings, hand-me-down clothes, beans on toast for dinner, adding water to everything to make it go further, your parents borrowing the money you got for your birthday, you know, though I wouldn't change a dang thing, it teaches you valuable life lessons. I remember giving birthday money for groceries too. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.